down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news, tips, and your photography questions in real time, with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
Hey, that's me. Thanks for joining me for another live episode of TogChat. I'm your host, Joe Edelman, and as always, my mission is to help photographers like you to develop a solid understanding of the hows and whys behind great photographs. Before we get going, I need all of you to please take a moment, tell your photography friends that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. You know, Facebook, Twitter, they're the quickest way to get the word out. You can click that share button that's right underneath the video, or I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste the link here in the chat window. It's tog.chat/live. So let everybody know, okay? We've got a lot of photographers here tuning in from all over the world right now. So as always, please check in, leave a comment, let me know you're here. It's really cool to see where people are watching from. Doyle just made it here, Duke's here, Robert, Troy, Gord, Sven's here, Lynn's here from the woods in New York. We got a bunch of people. Mark Lipton's here. Rough Shots hasn't been here in a while from Michigan. Good to see you guys, all right? So also, start posting your questions for tonight's discussion. As always, I'll do my best to answer them all during our 90-minute, 1-hour show. And if you've been here before, that made sense. But I'll tell you what, I don't have a lot of questions in the queue tonight. So it's a good night to get your questions in. And I'd really hate to run out of questions because that means like I either have to sing and dance, which trust me, that would be horrible, or we just end early and I get to go watch some TV. So get those questions in. I will do everything I can to get them answered. So I want to get started tonight. I told you guys last week, I'm going to mix things up a little bit, trying to add some new stuff in. So a couple of weeks ago, I promised you guys a little mini tutorial on a DIY Glamour Fan. And that was when I did this video that you see here, which was all about using fans to kind of create those cool glamour portraits. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the link for this video in the chat window for the folks that come along and see this later. You can go and whoops, that's not the link that we wanted. Let's try that one more time because that did not work very well. Here we go. Let me grab that. Copy. Yes, it helps if I remember that I'm on a Windows machine right now instead of a Mac. Okay, so there's the link for that previous video. Right now, I told you guys that I had a DIY Glamour Fan that I came up with. And before I even showed it to people, there were people like, oh, that's not gonna work because it's gonna cause vibration with a sensor and all kind of stuff. It's like, God, everybody chill out. Like everybody knows this stuff before they even see what it does. So I'm gonna tell you straight up, this is kind of a cheesy little gadget, but you know what? It works. So I'll show you the finished version first. Here is the finished version, okay? Fits on a hot shoe. Here, let me do it on this side. That way you can see it silhouetted on the white background. Fits on a hot shoe of a camera, has a ball head that is going to allow you to adjust angles and height, etc. The fan also has 4 speeds to it, but we'll get to that in a second, right? So I want to show you guys basically how I put this thing together because it's a super easy build. I get people that write me messages after some of the DIY videos and they're like, you know, that stuff's really cool, but it's still like more work than I'm willing to do or can do. Well, unfortunately, the problem with DIY is the reason it saves you money is because you're not paying for all the manufacturing process and the research and development, right? So the whole idea behind DIY is you kind of got to do it yourself. But this one, super simple. 2 parts that you purchase on Amazon, and it goes together really, really easy. So the links for the parts are in the description below this video, okay? So I'm gonna play a little video clip here, and I'm gonna kind of talk you through it. So this is the build. So what you're seeing now is the fan in the box. It's a little USB rechargeable battery powered fan, okay? So it's plastic, it's all of probably about 5 to 5.5 inches in diameter. So you only need 2 parts to make this work. One is that fan that you just saw me take out of the box. The second one is the little cheapo ball head that you see sitting next to it. The cord that you're seeing in the image is a USB cord. You can recharge the battery in this fan simply by plugging it into a USB connection on your laptop or your computer, Or, if you have like an Apple type plug or USB power cord, you can plug it into an outlet. But that's the rechargeable battery that comes with it. Super basic, super simple. So what you need in order to be able to build this gadget, 2 tools, that's it. One, you need a drill with a 1/4-inch drill bit in it, and the other is a Phillips head screwdriver. Now to get the base off, you gotta drill a hole through the base, okay? 2 drills, that's all, or 2 pieces that we're gonna drill, that's it. The reason you're gonna drill that hole is so that you can put the screwdriver through to take the screw out that holds the fan onto the base. Pretty simple, right? Once we've got it separated from the base, now we're ready to put a second hole in so that we can go ahead and we can attach the ball head. And literally you're gonna take that 1/4-inch drill and you're just gonna drill through that screw hole. That's it, we're making it bigger. Once you've done that, you're gonna have a hole in the bottom of it, just like you see there. Next up, we take the ball head, remove the top from it, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that top and we're gonna slide it between the bracket and the base of the fan. Now for me, I found that I like it really snug. So I did mine exactly the way you're seeing it right now. I am going to mention one little variable that you can do when we get through this video, okay? But then basically you're just gonna take that ball head, slide it in, tighten it up, and then you have a finished and ready to go DIY Glamour fan. It's really basic, really simple, okay? Now, what does this do for you and what kind of effects do you get? So just to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes, this is not going to be blowing hair straight out. It's not a big, huge glamour look. What I love this fan for is those times where I've got some really thin hair that is not managing itself well, and I want to be able to just keep it back off my subject's face. So you can see I've got the fan on top of the camera, it's turned on. When I'm doing this shot here, I don't even have it on full power. It's on the 2nd setting, and I'm just using it to keep those stray hairs. Because you see, I've got Monet fixing them partway through the shot. Her hair is really lightweight, and it keeps falling forward. So I'm just using that fan to keep a little bit of that hair off. So here's the great part. Since the fan is not super powerful, the benefit is I'm not blowing tons of air into my model's or my subject's face. So again, it's not gonna give you that big flowy glamour hair look, that really big thing. You're using it just to be able to keep those strays back off of the face and to give the hair just a little bit of motion coming off the face, right? So now I told you there was one little variable that I wanted to mention. I like having that 1/4-20 thread come up and hit the base of the fan head. So in other words, mine doesn't go forward anymore. I adjust mine using the ball head as far as the angles go, right? If you wanted to be able to adjust the head in the bracket, super simple. Just get one washer at Home Depot, or if you have one in your toolbox, grab a washer, put a washer on the outside here before you drop the ball head in so that the 1/4-20 thread doesn't come up as far. It's actually the 1/4-20 thread that stops it from tilting, which again, I like because for me, I do the tilt with the ball head. That's what I'm gonna do it with, okay? So super simple, super basic. It's got 3 button controls on the back. On, which, you tap it for what power you want. It's got 4 speed settings. Just on and off, sorry, is the 1 button. And then 4 speed settings, you've got plus and minus buttons, and there's little lights that will light up to tell you which one you're on. It's super quiet, and one of the other things that was, shall we say, mentioned when I first said, hey, I'm gonna do this, and I showed it off very briefly, people are like, oh, it's gonna cause vibration, and you're gonna get camera motion. No, these fans are super lightweight. They are super smooth. They're extremely quiet. They don't put out, all kind of noise. So you can have a normal conversation with your subject while you're shooting, and it's great. Somebody just asked, Chaz, if it's on the hot shoe, how do you trigger your flash? With a good old-fashioned PC cord. A cord, right? You're not gonna use this for every shoot that you ever do. This is a problem-solving tool. It's a DIY problem-solving tool. So basically, you saw it in that clip if you looked really close. I was using the PC socket on the camera, and I was wired to my strobe. That's it. If you are like a Godox user, instead of buying, in fact, here, let me grab one, okay? Instead of buying the latest and greatest, because everybody wants to have the latest and greatest, go ahead and use the older Godox transmitter that's got a hot shoe on top. So then you can drop that into your camera's hot shoe. There's another hot shoe, put the fan on it, you're just gonna angle it down a little bit more, problem solved, right? So it's actually really, really easy in that sense. Again, not something that you're going to use all the time. It's not enough fan to give you that big blowing hair, and you don't want it to be. The reason you don't want it to be is because you're very close to your subject. You don't want to be blowing really hard, strong air at your subject when you're doing that, right? You want just enough to keep things pushing off of the subject's face. That's all it's doing for you, is giving you just a little bit of a push with the air that's coming from the fan. That's it. So that is your DIY Glamour Fan. Okay, really, really easy. It's another tool in your toolkit. It is not a tool that you are going to use all the time for all your shoots. And it goes without saying, hopefully, it's not a tool that you're going to shoot a portrait with a 300 millimeter or a 200 millimeter lens and get any benefit from, right? It's a small, tiny, lightweight fan. In that video clip that you saw, I was shooting at about 5 feet from my subject. And I was able to get just that little bit of wispiness to keep the hair from falling onto the face, which was what my goal was entirely, okay? So that is the DIY Glamour Fan. How about if we do some questions, all right? Well, actually, I have a question for you guys. So I want you to go ahead and type it into the chat window if you have. How many of you have already updated and downloaded the Adobe Photoshop 2019 and the Adobe Lightroom 2019? So in case you've been living under a rock, there was a big announcement this week, right? Adobe Max is happening right now. I believe it's in San Francisco. It may be in Los Angeles. I'm not sure, but it's the big annual Adobe convention. So Adobe has been making all kinds of big time announcements this week. The big one that got all the big news, that you're going to have a full version of Photoshop available for the iPad Pro, which I'll be honest with you, this is gonna bug a lot of people. I could care less that Photoshop is going to be available on the iPad Pro. I know there are photographers that really like being able to use the iPad to retouch their images. At the risk of offending someone, I think that's fine if you are doing like landscape images and stuff like that, nature stuff. But if you're doing portraits and you're doing work where you're going to do any kind of retouching and things like that, you know, number one, you need a much bigger image to work on than what you're going to get even on a 12-inch iPad. Number two, for the kind of retouching work that I do, I'm sorry, iPad, even the iPad Pro, it's not going to be able to handle it because the files oftentimes get way too big. So I know that there are some people that are going to love it, will use it. That's cool. But for me, the iPad aspect of it, you know, is meaningless. So I'm going to switch my screen over here. I've got an article from Petapixel. I just happened to pull this up right before I came on. So I see quite a few of you did, which is good, okay? And you know, this is exactly what you normally get though. So please, I hope all of you actually look at some of these comments. One person's an Affinity user, so it doesn't bother them at all. Upgraded already, but no usable features for me. So that's one of the important things to remember, gang. Read the features list before you upgrade, right? Because if you don't need the features that it's going to give you, it just came out this week. It's been out for like 3 days. So wait a little while to upgrade. If there's nothing there that you're like, oh my God, like I have to have this feature. I'll admit, since I knew I was coming on here today, I went ahead and I downloaded both of them this afternoon and then proceeded to get really frustrated with Photoshop because they changed the default settings for resize, for transform. So I kept hitting the shift key to get it to keep its shape as I was trying to, resize something. And the sizes were going like all the heck over the place. I'm like, what's going on? And then I went and did some reading and realized, oh, the new default is just grab it and it automatically maintains its ratios, which, by the way, is great. But I hadn't taken the time to read anything. I just downloaded it so I could at least tell you guys, yeah, I took a look around. This is what's there, And so, of course, I needed to do a couple things in a hurry, and it was just driving me absolutely nuts because every time I tried to resize something, the stuff was just going all over the place. But I do love the fact that they have switched that default. What I don't like is that I have to retrain my brain now to not hold the shift key down when I, go to resize something. But this Pat Pixel article's got a pretty good rundown. So I thought we scroll through it really quick for those of you. I see a couple of people are like, I didn't hear about this yet. So here, let's just go through. So the big one is they have made a lot of upgrades in Lightroom. I'm trying desperately not to make some random joke here. Faster tethering, greater speed and stability when you're tethering to a Canon camera. So to hell with you, Sony and Nikon users. Yeah, if you got a Canon, it's going to be faster. So good for the Canon people, right? Doesn't really talk a whole lot about catalogs and speeding that up. So I can't say that I'm really, really excited about what I'm hearing about Lightroom. Let's face it, for any improvements in Lightroom, the people that are diehard Lightroom users are going to be thrilled, and that's cool. I mean, obviously, at its core, Lightroom is a great program for photographers. It just doesn't suit my needs, right? The one-step merge, the panorama stuff is actually pretty cool if you shoot that kind of stuff. The depth range masking, what they're doing is they're taking advantage of the raw data and the metadata that's being stored in your phone files at this point, which, yeah, that's kind of fun. You can play around with that. People view. Now, if you guys have been following me for a while and you've heard me talk about my predictions for the future in terms of our cameras and the software that we use, just saying, here's some of that stuff coming. Adobe has been talking all week at Adobe Max about Adobe Sensei and about all of the research and development that they are putting into all of the AI features. It's the future, and it's great. It's actually great. The real challenge is they've got a lot of technology that they're not letting us have yet. And other companies have a lot of technology that if we could start to get it together, it would completely change the landscape and it would change the game. But this is the first step. It's actually really, really cool. I think it's neat stuff that they're doing it. It's got tie-ins with your Apple Photos and that, which for Mac users, it's actually a really nice feature. The Adobe portfolio, I only know a couple of people that use that. I'm sure there's more than a few, but for me, not a big deal. Search improvements, if you're using it, that's very helpful. So, that's the Lightroom stuff. Oh, the improved high ISO rendering is in both Lightroom and Photoshop. Haven't had a chance to play with it yet, but hey, anything that they're going to do to improve high ISO is great. And I don't care. I'm not saying that because I'm a Micro Four Thirds guy. Let's be clear. I don't care if you're Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, or full frame. Bottom line is the higher the ISO, the lower your image quality gets, right? Regardless of what sensor you're on. So the fact that they are making improvements there, definitely really, really good, okay? For Photoshop, this is actually a really great one for me. I am excited about this. I did not have time to play with it today. I'm not kidding. I downloaded both the new programs at about 3:30 this afternoon. Content-aware fill is something that I use a lot in my imagery. And so I'm actually really excited the idea that they set it up that you can do things on layers. You can actually sample pixels. There's some masking tools that go along with that. Really, really cool. Other stuff that I thought was really cool, the multiple undos, the way they're changing that up is really good. They're definitely making a lot of usability stuff, which means they're listening to people. Even just the whole lock the workspace thing, I think is a great feature. So really, really good stuff there. And this is probably the other one that's huge in my world, and that's the live preview blend mode, or the live blend mode previews, so that as you're scrolling through that list, you can actually see what's going to happen instead of having to click and wait for it to render, click, wait for the render, click, and so on and so forth. You're actually able to scroll down and see those quick previews. That is huge, absolutely huge. The symmetry mode, I don't understand it yet. I haven't had a chance to watch that little video or read about it, but anytime somebody tells me there's something that's going to give me symmetry, I'm very interested in that, because if you've paid attention to my work, I use symmetry a lot. So I think that's going to have some, some potential there. The color wheels, this is actually a very, very important tool. For a lot of you, you're going to be able to ignore it, literally. But understand, the color wheel is the future of managing color, period. Look at what they're doing in the video world. Look at how we're applying LUTs and doing color management for video. Again, that is going to creep into the still world, and I really think it's going to take over the still world in terms of how we manage it. So I would encourage you, not that you have to start using this as got to be your primary color tool, but do pay some attention to it. Do a little bit of reading. Make sure you develop at least a basic understanding of it. Are you going to be in a situation where you're forced to use it today or tomorrow? No, definitely not. But it's coming. It is the future of how we're going to do color management, at least in my opinion, from everything I'm seeing, from the trends that are developing. So, the in-app learning stuff, I'm all for, computer intelligence. If it's going to make my work faster, simpler, easier, all for it. So, I think that that's absolutely great. Some of the spacing tools are really great. Being able to change the UI to make stuff more readable, I love that. Now that I'm an old guy and I got to rely on these glasses, it's great to be able to kind of make those tweaks along the way. So, we've got some other features built into Camera Raw, which again, this stuff is kind of gratuitous for me, but nonetheless, it's neat stuff that's there. So the bottom line, if you are a Lightroom or a Photoshop user, I would encourage you, take a couple minutes, do some reading, see what features are there. If there are features that you are really able to make use of, then upgrade. If you've already got the Creative Cloud license, whether or not it's the full Creative Cloud or the photography one, either one's fine, but go ahead and upgrade. If you don't see any features there, they're like, wow, that would really be a game changer for me, then like any other piece of software, I would encourage you to wait a week or two, right? This stuff's been on the street for just a couple of days. You want to give people a chance to really get into it, just like any new piece of tech. Give people a chance to get into it, really see what people are reporting back, if there's any issues, if Adobe needs to, release any bug fixes, that kind of stuff. But at least, from what I'm seeing, it looks pretty stable. Looks like it's going to work out, quite well. And indeed, this is not like, oh my God, earth-shattering and game-changing, but certainly it's been a little while, and it's nice to see some substantial improvements. Not just in feature set, but also the user experience. I think that's very, very important. The user experience aspect of it is crucial to really being able to keep people engaged in Adobe products, because there are a lot of competitors that are coming out. Somebody mentioned Affinity earlier. I don't know about you guys, but I am keeping a very, very close watch on Skylum and their Luminar software. I have it. Every time an update comes out, I've been grabbing that update. I've been using it, not for my studio work yet, but I'm using it for pretty much all of my shoot for fun images, mainly because I see it as a game changer. I really do. It's the program that truly gives Lightroom a run for its money. And a lot of people feel it is already. I think that we could agree with that, but the real key is once they come out with their digital asset management tools, which they are like at the gate, ready to release, once those digital asset management tools are out, it's going to be a game changer really, really, really fast. And so Adobe has got to really stay on top of making sure that they are working with that user experience. It's not just the feature set, but it's making the program easier to use, faster to use, all of those things. I mean, that's a big part of it. So it's not always about getting the new toys, but it's having a better experience with it. And that's really important, because there are companies now that are really kind of breathing down their throat. So I think it's going to be a very interesting couple of years ahead in terms of what's going to happen with our digital darkrooms and how we process images. And as much as I'm not excited about Photoshop being available on the iPad, I'll tell you what does excite me about Photoshop being available on the iPad. It means that Adobe is making a commitment to making Photoshop a lighter program. Lighter is a kind of a software programmer's phrase, meaning less code. Run faster, run more efficient, run with less code so that it can run on devices that don't have the same kind of processing power and RAM as a huge desktop computer or even like a MacBook Pro. So the fact that Adobe is taking this step, again, for somebody that's not doing tons of detailed work and isn't creating huge PSD files, then I think it's actually going to be potentially a really cool program to work on an iPad. For me, I just don't think it's going to be there yet, but it means that they're moving in that direction. And anything that's going to allow me to work smaller, faster, lighter, just like I said before, that's going to be a great thing. So hopefully it's kind of a sign of what's to come with regards to future development on all that. So moving on, let's do some questions. I'm not kidding, guys. I don't have a lot of questions tonight, so type away or it's going to be a short night, okay? So I had a question a little bit earlier. I want to find the one about here it is, from Mike Osinski. He asked if I had any DIY tips on making a charging station for all of the Godox battery chargers to be able to kind of keep them under control. And you know what? I forgot to grab the Godox battery charger. So let me grab one, okay? So this is a Godox battery charger for the Godox lithium batteries. Now, again, I use the 8200. So if you're using the 8400 or 600, it's a different charger, right? But I'm going to let you guys in on a little trick that I learned about just recently. And it was one of those moments where literally when I learned this, it was like, duh, that is so simple and so obvious. Why the heck didn't I know that? And I know some of you are going to say, well, yeah, duh, Joe, I've been doing that for 2 years. Well, sorry, but it wasn't obvious to me. So this is the charger for my Olympus batteries for the EM1 Mark II, right? So, you get a charger, you get these damn cords. It takes up tons of space. And especially if you have like bunches of them, it's annoying, right? They're like all over the place. I've seen tons of different solutions people would make. I have not made one yet, so Mike, maybe I will down the road. But honestly, what I would consider doing is I would consider using Velcro, okay? A Velcro strip on the back, a Velcro strip on a board, and boom, attach it to the board. At least that way now it's not going to move, and then you can start to organize cords. But here's the cool piece. I found a way to get rid of the cord. You know how some chargers just have like the pop-up plugs, the plug pops out and you stick it in the wall, right? Well, essentially you can do that with almost every single one of these kind of chargers that's made. And the way you do it, you see the plug style there, it's these two little circles. So here, there's the end that goes in. It's the two little circles that you're getting, right? So this is the real name for this. These little gadgets, you Apple folks, you'll recognize these. They're called duck head plugs. I have no idea why they are called duck head plugs, but you can Google it. Duck head plugs. Well, guess what? They have the same end to them as the cords that go with your chargers. So what you do is you simply, that way, plug it in. And now I can plug this right into an outlet and charge my battery. So literally during the day when I'm working, I have these things plugged in now because I'm working in a wireless studio now. So all of my strobes are battery operated. So I don't have to worry about plugging cords in for my lights. And the only outlet in my entire studio that has AC cords in it is the one that's right next to me here, because that's where all my live streaming is, and it's where the router is for the internet access and everything like that. So all of my other outlets wind up being these plugged in with these duck head plugs that you can buy really cheap on Amazon. Don't buy the Apple brand ones because they're more expensive. You buy the knockoffs. I've been buying sets of 3 and 4 of them for like less than $12 on Amazon, okay? And they're great. And what it also does is when I travel, instead of having to instead of having to take this in my case, I'm taking this in my case. That's it. So, and if I have 2 or 3 different chargers, then I only need one of these to go along. Chaz, that's okay for charging in the USA? Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, but, and I may be wrong, Chaz. I don't know. There may be a European version of these. Obviously, it depends on where in Europe, what kind of plug, etc. So indeed, for those of you that aren't in the US, I'm really sorry. But this is definitely a great solution for US, Canada, and believe me, these are like awesome. Just super simply awesome, okay? Yeah, James, this is very similar to the Nikon chargers. I mean, these are all very similar. It's just, the matter of the pins, but that's the beauty of it. You use these duck head plugs. So if you've got a charger that you pretty much have to use a cord because it doesn't have the pop-out plugs, you use these guys. And, if you're an iPhone user, you probably got some of these floating around. That's the thing. So when I first saw this idea, I literally went and grabbed a couple that I had sitting in my desk from old, Mac plugs or that kind of stuff, not iPhone, but Mac plugs. And I had a couple, and then I just went ahead and ordered them. So, yeah, Chaz, I know you have 3 pins in the UK, and again, I'm sorry, but at least, for US viewers, it's worth sharing. For those of you, in other countries, if they don't have a similar type of, folding plug, the first thing I would do, Chaz, is I would go and look at how Apple cords work in your country. If anybody's going to have a plug that's got some type of a folding piece to it or collapsing, it's going to be Apple. And that way, they don't have to make new charger units. They just have to make new plugs. So, I would start there. But I don't have all the answers. I'm just telling you straight up. But what I would do, if you need a solution and you're overseas at a minimum, get yourself a board, okay? And use Velcro. That way, if you don't have a lot of spares and you need to travel with it, you just pop it off. It's just got a little piece of Velcro on the back. That's fine. And that allows you then to at least organize the charger so they're not spreading out all over the place because, the cords are stiff. We've all been there, right? You try to line 2 or 3 of them up and they're just everywhere. So just get a board, a little bit of Velcro. That's where I would start with that stuff. That would be my suggestion, okay? Let's see here. $6 for a set of 2 on Amazon Rough Shots. Yeah, if you look around, there's all different prices because there's all different brands. Like I said, don't buy the Apple ones. The Apple ones are expensive. I would definitely go with the off brands for these, okay? Dino, you mentioned Skylum and Affinity, but I didn't hear anything about Capture One Pro. What are your thoughts of it as a Lightroom replacement? So if you go and do some research on Capture One Pro, I'm a big fan of Capture One Pro. I've said that many, many times. If you go and do some research on Capture One, they are not trying to be a Lightroom replacement. They don't consider themselves a Lightroom replacement. They have no intention of becoming a Lightroom replacement. Those are words from Capture One. Capture One, by their own designation, is a raw image or a raw file generator, processor, okay? So basically, Capture One is just the camera raw portion or the develop panel portion of Lightroom. Capture One is not trying to provide all of those other features that Lightroom does, and Capture One is not doing digital asset management, which is a big piece of what Lightroom does. So for the sake of simply developing images and or also for, there you go, Chaz, see that? See, you're making me feel like such a bum because I didn't have a UK version, and there's this thing called Google. You guys got to cut me a little slack sometimes, right? I found this cool idea, I shared it, all right? So good, I knew there had to be something. So now all you got to do is get yourself some Velcro while you're on UK Amazon, and then just go down, to the hardware lumber store, get a piece of wood, make yourself a board, line it all up, you're good to go, okay? Because if you think about it, and especially if you're handy with electronics, you could buy like a plug strip that you could essentially mount on a board, mount that board on a wall, so that way you've only got one plug coming out that's going to plug into an outlet, and then on that plug strip, just take these with the duck heads on them, right? And just go right down the plug strip and plug them in along the way. So again, if you're a little bit handy, that would totally work, okay? So Let's see. Jean Edward, Capture One is awesome. I find using sessions amazing. I can't imagine going back to catalog management style. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, it's just a matter of what you want out of the program, what you're used to. But I do find that people routinely look for comparisons between Lightroom and Capture One, or any of the others, and there's really not a comparison in that sense. So two completely different types of program with two completely different intended uses, as far as that goes. All right. So let's see. Dwayne has a question up here. How do you decide what focal length lens to shoot your portrait work with? I currently have a 70-200, an 85, and a 50. I shoot location portraits mostly, but I hope to get into a studio soon. All right. So Dwayne, first of all, the honest answer, let me start kind of at 50,000 feet, all right? The honest answer, first off, is it depends on what lenses you have available to you. That's first. So in your case, you've got the 70-200, the 85, and the 50. So you've got a good range of lenses. Now, what you didn't tell me, Dwayne, is what sensor size you're working on. Are you on full frame? Are you on APS-C? Are you micro four thirds? I'm just going to assume for the sake of conversation that you're on a full frame, okay? You guys with the audio stuff, look, please, I don't control the audio. YouTube controls the audio. I have a great feed going out, so we can load up this stream with people asking about the audio, or we can talk photography, and that way I can go ahead and try and answer questions. But understand, when you guys dump all this, my audio is out of sync. Number one, there's not a damn thing I can do about it. Number two, it makes it really impossible for me to see the questions. Right? I'm one guy. It's just me. Okay? So help me out. All right? If the sound disappears completely, yeah, start typing and let me know. But 9 times out of 10, gang, if your audio's out of sync, refresh your browser. If you're on a phone, close the app, start it again, and you'll be good to go. But I can't do anything about the audio. I'm actually going to get a graphic made. It's like, if you have an audio problem, it's on you. Don't type it. I'm sorry. I can't help you. All right? So, Dwayne, back to your question about your lenses. So, given the lenses that you have, and I'm going to leave the location portrait until last, because let's just talk portraits in general, right? That was your first part of your question. My advice would be either use the 85mm, if you don't want to have to deal with a bigger lens, or use the 70-200. So the 70-200 is obviously going to allow you to zoom with the lens. With the 85mm, you're going to zoom with your feet. If you need to change your composition, you're either going to get closer or you're either going to back up, right? I mean, that's how that's going to work. Not that that's bad, that's just the difference. The upside is, especially if you're a full frame person, you are going to, be dealing with stuff that's a lot lighter using the 85 than you will with the 70-200. The 50mm for me is not, you guys are just killing me. You really are, honest to God. I know you're all trying to be helpful, but hey. Anyway, so John Edward, that's a good idea, because at least then it would give people something to type about. So Dwayne, the 50mm for me is just a little bit short. In order to fill the frame with a 50mm for a portrait, you're going to want to get a little bit close, which runs the risk of starting to get some bloat in the person's face. You need to be very careful of that. Now, since you mentioned location portraits, if you're just shooting a regular portrait on location, all the same things apply. Everything that I just told you, the 70-200, if you want to be able to zoom, or the 85 and zoom with your feet, still applies. The only exception is going to be if those location portraits are meant to be kind of environmental portraits, right? If they are meant to be environmental portraits where you want to show a little bit of the setting, maybe it's like a baker in the bakery with all of his cakes in front of him, that kind of a thing, well, then that 50mm would probably be more suited for that. In fact, a wide angle lens like a 35 or a 28 or even a 24 might be better suited for doing that. But for kind of a straight up portrait scenario, I would encourage you, 85 is an awesome portrait lens. In fact, that would be my choice, an 85 or a 100 millimeter fixed focal length lens. If I'm full frame, you know that with my Olympus, I use the 45 millimeter f1.2, so that's a 90 millimeter full frame equivalent. I just love that focal length, and I love how close it focuses. That would be my first choice, but there's nothing wrong with using the zoom. I've done work here in the studio with a 75 millimeter, so that's 150 millimeter full frame focal length. I've done work here in the studio with the 12 to 100 millimeter zoom, obviously never using it at 12 millimeter, always using it at 40 and above. I've done stuff here in the studio with the 40 to 150 millimeter also. So they all work. It's really kind of a matter of finding your preference. I think a lot of photographers tend to go with the 85 because the 85s are usually a little bit faster, like a 1.8. And if they want that bokeh in the background, well, then the 1.8 is going to make that a little bit easier. It's not the only way to get bokeh in the background, but it's easier. If you're doing a studio type portrait, even on location, then the bokeh doesn't matter, does it? So using the zoom lens is also absolutely fine. So I know I kind of gave you answers on both sides of the fence there, but it's really a matter of preference. I would just avoid the 50. That would be my recommendation, okay? So Simon Lynch, do I shoot at f11 or f16? Well, it depends on what I'm shooting, Simon. Nobody shoots at the same aperture for every single picture they take, right? You find you have to double up the 8200s or use your 8600 Pro for the key light at these apertures. Well, sure, but why the heck do you need to shoot at f11 or f16? Like, give me a reason, Simon. It's like, seriously, I don't want to pick on you, but I want to understand a little bit. Like, I don't understand why you need to shoot at f11 or f16. So let's start there. Give me an answer about why you need to shoot at f11 or f16, and then I can help you deal with your light situation. But I don't shoot at f11 or f16 in the studio or when I'm doing portraits, like ever. Well, I shouldn't say ever. You know, never is a bad word, right? If I'm doing live composites, I do. But rarely am I going to use those apertures for portraiture work. So let me know what you're doing, okay? All right. Let's see here. Eric Kershaw had a question. A few years back, a friend of his asked him to do a portrait, and she loved it. People still comment on it. He did it with a Nikon D80 at the time. This was a few years ago. Recently, they caught up again. She wants to have him do more pictures. He had a heart attack 2 years ago. Eric, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you're still here and hanging in with us. So now he's working with an Olympus EPL5 and a 45 millimeter f1.8. So the last shot was done with a Nikon D80, which is APS-C, and now he's working with the EPL5, which is micro four thirds, and the 45 millimeter f1.8. His question is, do you think it would do the job or not? There are no funds to get anything else. So yeah, Eric, I mean, I see no reason why it wouldn't. All of the images that you're seeing me post for the last year, Eric, are all shot with micro four thirds. Now, yeah, they're shot with the EM1 Mark II, the majority of them, but actually tomorrow, you'll see a video drop on YouTube that's shot with the EPL9. So that's the newer version in the EPL series. That's a 16 megapixel camera. You're gonna be able, just like my studio shots, you're gonna be able to count eyelashes. You're gonna see super sharp images. So, you know, the key to it, Eric, is, you know, pay attention. Make sure that you've got good exposures set. Make sure that you're doing all of the right things photographically. There's no reason at all that that camera won't be able to produce as good a portrait as your D80 did. No reason at all, okay? All right, Rush Shots, I saw your question earlier. So his question was, he just shot a glamour and a beauty shoot working with a makeup artist for the very first time. Congratulations, welcome to the big leagues. He plans on submitting a shot to my Facebook group, but he was wondering how much editing is considered appropriate. So when I first saw this question go by, I was kind of like, all right, let me answer this now because it doesn't apply to TogChat. Then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Actually, this does apply to TogChat. This is a great question to talk about. So ignore the Facebook group piece, right? Let's just talk about the last part. How much editing is considered appropriate? So Rough Shots, there's no way that I can give you a succinct, clear definition of how much is appropriate, beyond saying to you, you can do as much retouching as you want until it looks like crap, and then you can't. I mean, honestly, that's the answer. I have images and I have seen images that I know went through hours of retouching, and they look amazing. And I have made images in my career, and I see images every day that I know only went through about 5 minutes of retouching, but in that 5 minutes, those images were grossly over retouched. Now, what made them grossly over retouched? Things like no texture in the skin. Things like no depth in the skin. In other words, literally, it's almost like the face is a flat board because they've been so retouched, there's no detail left, right? So one of the great things about photographing people, rough shots, is that everything we do is subjective. So Alfred typed here, it's like it's like saying how much light is appropriate, and that's reasonable, right? What is the right exposure? There is no such thing as a right exposure. The right exposure is what looks best to you, the artist, the creative individual. Now, that doesn't mean that someone else can't come along and look at your image and say, "Oh, that just looks too bright." Well, that's their opinion and that's their experience. Okay. For me, if you go and you look at my images in my portfolio, I do a lot of retouching. The skin, perfect. There are plenty of people that would say, "Oh, that's over retouched." But life's beautiful. Thank you so much. I will be at, I got to answer this, Super Chat. Thank you so much. I will be at Photo Plus all 3 days next week. In fact, I'm going to come back to your question, Rough Shots. But real quick, let me just switch my screen over, guys, and talk about my calendar here really quick. So for those of you that are accessible to New York, Photo Plus, the big one, it's next week in New York, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I will be there all 3 days, the entire day. I'm speaking all 3 days, just once a day. I'll be speaking on the Olympus stage, and I'll be doing actually some really cool demos. I started doing my practice shots for it today, and I'm gonna do some stuff on stage, live, real time, that most people would not consider doing with Olympus cameras, or for that matter, would not consider doing for portraits to begin with, okay? So I'm pretty sure I have the times set up in here. Yes, so on Thursday at 3:30, I'll be on the Olympus stage. On Friday morning, I'm doing the street fashion photo walk outside the Javits Center. And then on Friday, I'll be talking on the Olympus stage at, whoops, let's open that back up again. That's going to be at 1:30 in the afternoon. And on Saturday, I'll be presenting on the Olympus stage at 10:30 in the morning. But I will be in the Olympus booth all day long, all 3 days. And at the beginning of every hour, or almost every hour, I will be doing a portrait demo in the Olympus Portrait Experience, where you'll be able to come up and actually photograph a model that I'm working with, try out the 1.2 lenses from Olympus, try out an Olympus camera. Don't worry, if you're a Sony or Nikon or Canon person, you're still allowed to take pictures. But you'll be able to talk with me one-on-one. I will be there doing demos. So yeah, I'm gonna be there pretty much all week. So life's beautiful. If you're coming to New York, make sure you stop by and see me, please. I would love to meet you. Also, for those of you that can't make it to New York, the following weekend, well, actually, here's one that's a little bit different. Obviously, you guys always hear me talk about doing talks about photography. The Monday after, now you kind of have to be near Allentown for this one, but the Monday after Photo Plus, here in Allentown, I'm going to be doing a talk at Muhlenberg College. You've heard me talk about Muhlenberg. That's where my wife teaches. That's where I have taught in the past. I'll be doing a talk about how to monetize your YouTube channel. It's not about the videos. This is for the Innovation and Entrepreneurship program at the school. So I will be doing a talk that night. So look at this. Rambling Todd, Olympus cameras are crap for studio stuff. So Rambling Todd, you know what? I'm not going to delete your post. But since you're a jerk, I defy you to tell me why, number one. And then number two, I defy you to post a link to your portfolio with your real name. And let's take a look at it. I'll bring it up on the screen right now. Since you're such an expert, because I've got a lot of images that prove that your statement is crap. So bring it on, all right? Since you're gonna come in here and you're gonna troll me like a jerk, put up or go away. Because your next comment, if it doesn't provide me the information, I'll simply get rid of you. I don't need that kind of crap, right? So there it is. Now, so I'll be doing this talk the following Monday. Sorry, guys, I'm not going to put up with that kind of stuff from anybody. If he's got images that prove me wrong, let's see them. Let's talk about that, all right? The following weekend, I'll be in Newark, Delaware at the Horizon Photography Summit. A lot of you have been asking if I'm ever going to be doing full-day workshops. Well, you got your wish. I'll be doing a full-day fashion and glamour portraiture workshop on Friday, November 2nd. And then on Saturday the 3rd, Sunday the 4th, I'll be teaching there. The following week, I'm out in St. Louis at Creve Coeur for the Photopalooza. I'll be there on Friday and Saturday. And then in December, I'll be down in Austin, Texas. So whole bunch of stuff coming up, okay? So I hope to meet you guys at that stuff. But definitely, if you're coming to New York next week, make sure you come out and see me, okay? So Michael Hampton, awesome. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really appreciate it, okay? So anyway, back to the question that I was working on here, which I completely lost track of. Son of a gun. Rough shots. All right, let me get your question back up here on my screen so that I can answer that for you, okay? So, you know, the whole what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. So it's really a matter of your taste. That's really the most honest answer I can give you. What you need to do, rough shots, is you need to make sure that you're not asking people that question. But what you should be doing is looking at other photographs. Look at mine. Look at Lindsay Adler's. Look at anybody whose work you admire and develop your own sense of what do you like, what do you not like. Because believe me, just like we just saw this guy come in and, you know, dump, oh, Olympus cameras are crap in the studio. Okay, you know, people have opinions. And that's his opinion. He's entitled to it. But I'd love to see him, you know, put his work up. All right? That's why I'm calling him out. Because I'll put my work up. So look at other people's work. But understand that once you decide what you like, there are going to be people that don't like it. And that's okay. Period. There are people that don't like Olympus. And that's okay. But I'm not going to tolerate a jerk in my chat. So we'll see if he manages to put up or not. Okay? So the bottom line is that, you know, you're going to work with your images to the point that you are comfortable with them. If you're just starting out and you are trying to kind of get a sense of what you like, then the best thing you can do is experiment. Try working on an image to the point where you think it looks good, and then keep pushing until you get to the point where you think it looks bad, okay? So now, rough shots, you're coming back here with, you guess you mean to say that for a collab with a makeup artist to show off her skills and not just Photoshop the crap out of everything, how much is appropriate? Oh, dude, that depends on the makeup artist, and that depends on what she's comfortable with. That's a conversation you should be having with her, okay? I have done retouching on images where the makeup really wasn't that good, right? So I know the makeup artist gave it her best. At its core, it was a really good image, and it was good makeup. So I spent extra time, and I, shall we say, polished that makeup. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But since you're, you added, you kind of buried the lead, rough shots, right? Since you're talking about, hey, this is representing a makeup artist's work, and it's images for that makeup artist, well, then you should have a discussion with her. And, you know, you have to have an honest discussion. So let's just say, hypothetically, let's just say she did some design on the face, or better yet, no, let's keep it simple. Let's just say that the lip, the edging was not good. It's really rough. So that's actually something that's really easy to clean up in Photoshop. Now, maybe she was doing something creative on that lip, and it's really rough. It's not inappropriate for you to send her a close-up of that and say, hey, I just want to let you know, this is what we photographed, and I'm thinking that it might look a little bit better if I clean up that line. But I wanted to give you the option for your portfolio because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable with what I've done with the image for you. And so what you're going to do then, let's just say she says, no, I want it to be exactly like that. I don't want you to change it, which would be kind of dumb, right? But maybe she does. Well, then go ahead and give her that shot, right? So rough shots, no frequency. Okay, so rough shots. Look, I got to wrap this question up, man, because you're asking me questions in pieces. Bottom line, I stand by what I just said. You retouch it to where you like it. Literally, the answer is still the same. Retouch it to where you like it. Don't worry about the makeup artist. If you're going to change the makeup artist's work and the image is for the makeup artist, then have a frank conversation with them and ask them if they're okay with that. And then what you do is you make two versions. One version for the makeup artist, one version for you. But I promise you, the bottom line is you're overthinking it. You're simply overthinking it. Rock that image to where you love it and show it to the world. Some people are going to say, just like the guy that was in my chat window earlier, you suck. Other people are going to say, whoa, that's amazing. They're the people that you care about. The people that are rude enough to say you suck aren't worth stressing over. They're just not. Okay? So, but seriously, don't overthink it. Especially now that you're talking about frequency separation, you're overthinking it. Okay? I have no problem with frequency separation, dodging, burning, liquefying until it looks bad. But there's no book, there's no rule, there's no guideline where it's like, this looks good, this looks bad. It's all subjective. It's simply all subjective. For me, in those same conversations that you're referencing, you heard me say, I need to see texture in the skin. Once the texture is gone, it's too much. Secondly, if that texture is faux texture, put there by frequency separation that looks like a close-up of a Barbie doll, that's plastic. And I don't like that. I don't want that. So when I say texture, I want to see pores. Those are my guidelines. Those are the standards by which, I'm going to work to. But yeah, if it's a situation where your makeup artist wants something different and you were doing a trade or a collaboration with them, then by all means do too. It's no different than if I'm doing a picture of a subject and I'm really wishing that subject would drop 10 pounds, but she's beautiful and I love the picture. I'm going to retouch a version for her. Let's say it's a model. I can't make her skinnier and then have her put that picture in her portfolio. That would be inappropriate. It's false advertising. So I will finish that image for her and give it to her. But then I'm going to go do that version that's 10 pounds later. And I know that is wildly unpopular, so that's a whole nother political, debate that we'll have some other time. But I will make a version then for me, if that's what I want, because that's my version. That's, essentially my art, okay? So let's see here. Andrew L is doing my answers for me. That's good though. So Dr. No, you said, where would you find makeup artists? So let me help you with that, right? If you go to my website, I'll show you guys really quick here, okay? Let me just bring this back up on the screen. Go to the website, up at the top of every page on the website, and I'll paste the main link in here in just a second. So actually, before I forget, here is my speaking schedule for those of you that are interested. And then what you're going to do is at the top of every page, you'll see this link that says resources for models, okay? So if you click on that link, you will see right here, Makeup Artist Directory, and you can search through all 50 states. Now, if you are not in the US before somebody, you're in Germany, there it is, Dr. No. Okay, so this will not help you, I'm sorry, but for the rest of you, so Dr. No, what I would do is I would look up, since you're in Europe, and for those of you that are watching from Europe, help me out on this. I would recommend that you look up a website called Purpleport, Purpleport. I think it's based out of Great Britain, but my understanding is it covers most of Europe. There may be kind of a German version of this, but it's a website that's almost like Facebook for models and makeup artists and photographers, for people to be able to connect, and that here in the United States, there is a version of that called Model Mayhem, which is also accessible in Europe. So you could try Model Mayhem, it's M-A-Y-H-E-M, Model Mayhem. Try those websites and you may be able to find makeup artists that way. And then the other option, by the way, there's Instagram. Do a hashtag search on Instagram. If you don't know how to do hashtag searches, Instagram is actually becoming a great way to find models. Most of the models that I get from my workshops and my demonstrations when I'm traveling around the country, I'm not using websites like Model Mayhem anymore. I'm finding them on Instagram. So I'll type in, hashtag model and then the name of the city or the town that I'm going to, and up will pop a bunch of them. Okay, so you can do the same with makeup artists. So interestingly enough, Peter, Model Mayhem is not hit or miss. I've talked about this before. The only reason Model Mayhem is hit or miss in terms of finding what you're looking for, but once you've found it, the idea that will that person flake or not, that is not hit or miss. So if we have time, I'll talk about this again tonight. I've talked about it many times before, but if not, we'll bring it up another week. If a model flakes and they've been booked on Model Mayhem or Purple Port, 9 times out of 10, I can talk to that photographer for 5 minutes, find out all the steps in communication they had with that model, and prove that it was the photographer's fault that the model flaked. 9 times out of 10. I'm traveling for companies like Olympus, and I'm doing demonstrations all across the country. I find my models on Model Mayhem and Instagram, etc. I've never had a model flake, ever. It's not going to happen either. That's the best part. Okay, so it's all about how you approach the process. So the website's not at fault. It's the photographer that's fault for the lack of effort that they put into the process. That's the key. So if we have time tonight, I'll gladly go through that. But if not, we'll save that for another time. Okay. Kirsten, is it okay to touch up a model's natural blemishes? Is it okay to sort out a makeup artist's mistakes? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, totally. Okay. Natural blemishes, I'm always going to get rid of. Moles are another thing. If you're shooting the model for her portfolio, you should leave moles in. Scars, if you're shooting the model for a portfolio, you should leave things like that in. Birthmarks, all that kind of stuff, leave it in if it's for her portfolio. If it's for you, take that stuff out. If you want, it's entirely up to you. Maybe she's got lots of freckles and you like them, okay? So let's see here. And Dr. No, sorry, to go back to your other the second half of your question about not having to pay them. Obviously, that's a little bit harder, but that's where websites like Instagram, Facebook, the Purple Port, they do come in handy because you will find beginners. You will find beginners that are willing to go ahead and do trades to build out their portfolios as well. So, it's definitely the way to go, okay? All right, so let's see here, just scrolling back up. Life's beautiful. You're in Morristown and you're not going to make it to Photo Plus? Really? That's a shame. Charlie Snyder, do I recommend a certain pen or tablet for retouching? I actually use the Wacom Intuos. I think it's, what are they up to, 4 now? I use the large. I use the big one because I've got like, 2 30-inch screens sitting side by side. So I like to have a decent sized movement to traverse both screens as opposed to working on a small tablet and you move a 1/4 of an inch and suddenly you're like on the other screen. So I do use the bigger tablet. I think it's the 4, whichever is their kind of newest version of the Intuos line. That's what I have, and I highly, strongly recommend it for retouching. And I'll give you guys full disclosure about tablets. I have talked about this before. I've been using tablets exclusively for my retouching for probably about 3 years now. That's all. Prior to that, I bought and sold 5 Wacom tablets. Bought them, had them for about 2 weeks, and then sold them. Bought another one, had it for 2 weeks, sold it. Each time determined that I was going to start using a tablet. And I just could not get myself to work with it. And it finally was a matter of just getting to the point where it's like, all right, time to put on your big boy pants and grow up and just dig in and get used to it. And yes, it's so much better than a mouse. But it does, there's a learning curve. So if you're just making that transition from working on a mouse to a tablet, be forewarned, it's not like you're just gonna start doing it, it's gonna be, ooh, amazing. But also understand one of the great things about the Wacom tablets is that you can customize the buttons and a lot of the features on it. So you need to spend a little bit of time and effort and really customize that tablet to your workflow so that you can really make it work. Okay, so you're going to make it at least one of the 3 days. Life's beautiful. Excellent. Very, very good. Okay. So let's see. Dr. No, you retouch the images. You never give unretouched images to anybody. That's like the biggest joke ever. handing somebody raw images, unless they're paying you to hand them raw images. I have commercial clients that have paid me to say, no, we have an in-house design department. They'll deal with all the post-production. That's fine. But otherwise, in this kind of a situation, no. You do all of your retouching. You delivered finished images. In my opinion, when a photographer hands over raw images just because it's a trade. It's a trade. Oh yeah, you want to do something with them? Go ahead. That's the photographer saying, here, I don't give a damn about these pictures that we just invested this time in taking. So that's unforgivable. You retouch them. You deliver retouched images, period. Okay? All right, so scrolling back up here. Let's see. So that was the tablet question. We did the makeup artist question. Let's see. We did that one. Will any videos be available of me on stage, Annette? I don't know that I will not have a videographer there in New York like I did in Vegas. I was very fortunate in Vegas that one of my patrons happens to work on the West Coast in LA, and he is a photographer, videographer for the Today Show. And he actually came out and spent all 3 days and taped me, which was like amazing. I know that they're planning on doing some video while we are at Photo Plus. Olympus is planning, but I don't know what and to what degree. I would assume if that happens, I will be able to get access to it. So yeah, I'm not sure. So I don't want to promise something that I can't deliver. I have no plans to have somebody videotape it and put it up. But there will be lots of like Instagram lives and that kind of stuff. So if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure that you are, because I will have people posting some live feeds on Instagram and that while I'm doing it. So I'll make sure there's at least bits of it getting out there for, for sure. Okay. All right. William Hepley, so you never say Fuji. I don't say, actually, I do say Fuji a lot. I'll admit, Fuji doesn't come off the top of my tongue, which is not nice to Fuji. I have nothing against Fuji, but people ask me, like, how come you're not into Fuji? I'm not into Fuji for the same reason I'm not into Panasonic. They're great cameras. Fuji's doing some really cool stuff. I don't like the ergonomics. I simply do not like the ergonomics of Fuji cameras. That does not make them bad cameras. That just means they're not right for me. And the same with Panasonic. I really just, it was great for video, the Panasonics, because you're putting them in a cage or they're on a tripod, right? So you're never actually handling the camera. But for stills, to me, the whole grip setup and the depth of the bodies is just bulky. It's boxy on the Panasonic. Fuji's kind of the other way around. It's just square and thin. It's actually a lot like Sony, and I'm not a big fan of the Sony ergonomics. So that's why. But I will admit, I'm guilty. I do tend to not mention Fuji in lists. It's not intentional. I promise you. God's honest truth. It's me probably not giving them the credit that they are due at this point, because again, they are producing some great cameras. So William, I will work on that because I should. You're right. Okay. So let's see here. Popcorn. I have a white background and I want to get the whole person up and down perfectly white. Can you explain how? Well, you mean you want the background perfectly white, not the person, right? Well, Popcorn, I can't explain because you haven't given me enough information to explain. So, really quick, you got 20 minutes, so get that information in there. I need to know how many lights do you have? I need to know what kind of distance do you have? In other words, how far is your subject going to be from the background? Right? There's so many variables that you're not giving me information to. If I just spit out some answer based on what I do, it's potentially going to mess you up more than it's going to help you. So you got to give me a lot more background. I need to know, what's going to be the subject distance from the background. I need to know what kind of lights you have and how many. And I need to know what kind of lens you're going to shoot with, like focal length. Okay, so, give me that information, and then, yeah, I will definitely do my best to try and help you out, okay? Simon, I shoot animal portraits, and I like the nose to the back of the head in focus. I like it as crisp as I can get it. Also, when doing self-portraits, it gives me leeway for my focus. Well, so Simon, okay, cool. And actually, one of the Olympus photographers, Amanda Strzeski, is an awesome pet portrait photographer, dog portrait photographer. And off the top of my head, I don't know what aperture she shoots at, but I can tell you from my understanding of depth of field, F16 is giving you a whole lot of depth of field. Now I get it, animals are, frequently kind of unpredictable, right? But depending on what focal length lens you're using on, depending on what sensor, etc., F11 or F16 is actually much more depth of field than you need. So that's kind of the first thing, is to figure out like, how much depth of field is that giving you and how much do you really need? If you're determined to shoot everything at F11 or F16, Simon, then honestly the straight answer, suck it up and spend the money and buy the 600s, because that's the only way you're going to do that. The 8200s are not meant to do that unless you're going to put them very, very close to the subject. So, that's your other option, is to get them much, much closer. But with animals, that's hard, because especially if the animal spooks, they can knock over the lights, they can hurt themselves, do all kind of damage, etc. So you need to be able to have your lights back a little bit, and that's where you're running into a problem. Also, Simon, depending on what camera you're using, what's to stop you from raising your ISO a little bit? Because keep in mind, that's going to offset the power differences in the strobes. Even if you're using a micro four thirds, going up to like, let's say ISO 400 or even 640, you're not sacrificing quality. You're just not. And that's going to give you, another 2 stops over the base ISO of the camera. So there's a lot of ways to kind of get that difference made up. If your scenario is that you're trying not to spend the money for the 600s, in other words, you want to be able to work with a lesser expensive flash, then you've got to look for the other solutions. Remember, there's 3 sides of the exposure triangle, right? And all of them have an impact on how we how we set our exposure. So Ajax, how you doing? Now that you're using all 8200s, have you experienced a different workflow now that you don't have the modeling LEDs from your previous strobes? So actually, that's a great question, and the answer is yes, but not in the way that you think. In terms of my photography, still images, no, I haven't experienced anything different. I never relied on the modeling lights to see my lighting. But keep in mind, I'm older than sin, and I've been doing this like forever. So I understand when I put a light here, this is what it's going to give me, and I do a test shot, and I see what I have, right? So I'm not saying you don't need modeling lights. No, modeling lights are actually very, very helpful, especially when you're learning lighting. Where it has been a big difference in my workflow is that I was able to use the modeling lights from the honey badgers as video lighting, so that I was able to shoot video clips that look just like my stills. That is no longer possible. So I'm actually kind of DIYing a solution to that, which I'll be trying out after I get done this next set of trips that I have coming up. But that's really the only thing that has been an issue for me as far as changing workflow, but not on the still side of it. Daniel Rainey, to what extent do you or should someone take into account what Ken Wheeler, the angler photographer, says about element count, micro contrast, etc., when considering purchasing a new lens? So listen closely, okay? So that I don't get misquoted and somebody's going back to Ken and saying, Joe Edelman trashed you tonight. I love Ken. Ken gets a bad rap, straight up. I've said this in TogChat after TogChat after TogChat, right? But here's the thing. For most of us, and let me explain this before you walk away with the answer, right? Most of us should not pay attention to Ken. So let me explain, because that seems a little bit backwards. First I'm saying, hey, I love the guy, and now I'm saying don't pay attention to him. Hold on, right? You guys know that I started using a phrase about a year ago, and I've talked about this routinely. It was about this time last year where I first used the phrase gear-tographer. In fact, good luck finding anybody that used that phrase before me. When I started using it, I meant it as kind of an insult. It was based on the fact that so many people were so hung up on their gear and the numbers and pixel size and sensor size and dynamic range, all this stuff. And yet they were taking really crappy pictures because they knew they had the best gear with the biggest and the most and all of this, but they still couldn't use it. And they were in for lots of money at the same time. But I realized something, because indeed I upset some people, which was not really my goal. It was really meant to kind of prod people into thinking. But the fact is, words have consequences, right? And I upset some people because what I learned after I started using that phrase is that there are people whose primary enjoyment, their primary pleasure from photography is not about taking the greatest pictures in the world. It's not about being the most creative photographer in the world. It's actually about the gear, understanding it, knowing it, truly understanding why does element count matter? What does element count have to do with taking a picture? All of those things, right? So here's the way that I would explain my answer to you in terms of you don't need to pay attention to Ken. If you are a photographer like me, who is interested in the creative process, remember why I tell you all the time why I'm a photographer? It's really not about the pictures. It's because it gives me access to interesting people. Don't get me wrong, I love photography, but it gives me access to people. That's where my pleasure comes in. So it doesn't matter how many elements are in my lens for me to be able to strike up a conversation with someone or to say, hey, I would love to photograph you. It doesn't matter. And the best part of it is, especially if you're dealing with camera brand lenses. So we're going to leave the aftermarket lenses out of this conversation for now. But if you're dealing with Canon lenses on a Canon camera, Nikon lenses on a Nikon camera, Sony on a Sony, Olympus on an Olympus, Panasonic on a Panasonic, and yes, Fuji on a Fuji, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They're all good lenses. They're all going to produce great images. Well, technically great images, because the photographer is the one that actually produces the great image. So to go back to your question, Daniel, it really depends on, for you, what is the most important part of this process, okay? You know, one of the things I also found that kind of creates geartographers, cameras are expensive, really expensive. When you've got that kind of money invested, you want to feel that you have made the right choices. I mean, come on, who wouldn't, right? Who wants to buy a camera or a lens only to find out, oh, this is a piece of junk, I shouldn't have bought this? Who wants to do that? So people tend to get nose deep buried in the numbers. And the reality of it is, you know, Canon has the Canon Explorers of Light, Nikon has the Nikon Ambassadors, Fuji has their ambassadors, Panasonic has the Luminaries, Olympus has the Visionaries, and so on. And we all go out and we use the cameras and the lenses from our manufacturers religiously, and we all produce, for every one of those brands, produce incredible images, right? So does that stuff matter? I would argue it doesn't matter at all. So that's not at all being disrespectful to Ken, but that's recognizing that, and I've said this many times, if you are concerned about that information, and if you are concerned about making sure that you are getting the best numbers for, you know, micro contrast and all that kind of stuff and element count, then Ken is definitely the guy to follow. He is absolutely the guy to follow. Yes, he's a little eccentric, but you know what? Everybody just needs to cut him some slack. He knows his stuff. He really does. So it was a long answer, but it's important to make sure you guys understand, because I didn't want to just say, no, you can ignore Ken. It depends, Daniel, on what your priorities are and that kind of stuff. So Delta Dave, any plans to get your hands on the new Honey Badgers to review? No. I mean, you know, never say never, but I don't think so at this point. I just don't have the time, literally, to be doing gear reviews. In fact, you'll see, full disclosure, tomorrow, I've got a video coming out tomorrow afternoon that is about the shoot that you guys saw me posting about on social media that I did in Dumbo, New York, a couple weeks back. So, and now you can all watch, right? You'll watch what happens in the comments. There are going to be people that are going to come in and call me a shill. There will be people that will come in and say, oh, you're just trying to sell an Olympus camera, because I'm going to talk about this little Olympus camera called the Pen EPL9. Really awesome camera. But the video is not all about the camera. The video is teaching you, hey, this was my assignment. Olympus was doing this Instagram promotion with these two young Instagrammers. And I'm walking you through in this video every step that I took, from pre-planning, from going there, doing location scouting, to how we set up our schedules, all of it all the way through. So yeah, am I talking about that camera in it? I am. Am I expecting that you're all going to run out and buy that camera? God, no. In fact, I even say that in the video. I personally will use that camera as my backup camera from time to time when I want to travel light. But so anyway, that being said, really what I'm trying to get away from at this point is doing gear-centric videos, period. Mainly because I've learned that people really want the tutorials from me. They want, you know, the little, how did you do this? Why did you do this? And ironically, that's the whole thing that you see when you start to see my videos is the hows and the whys behind photography. So basically that's my game plan. That's what I'm gonna do, okay? Life's beautiful. Refresh your browser or relaunch your app. The video's still going. Literally, I'm almost up at 90 minutes. I've had one dropped frame the whole time. So the stream's going out good, okay? All right. Sitting, how do you justify your price to clients when all this new technology has helped flood the market with cheaper photographers? You know, that's really not, it's not a big problem. Oh, actually, one second. Put that on pause for a second. Let's see. Oh, Daniel, you're very welcome. And obviously, not wanting to make a bad purchase, believe me, that's completely understandable. Nobody does, okay? And then also, Delta Dave, I'm sorry, one little thing I left out in the end. I will tell you this. If you're interested in seeing the honey badgers in use, okay? Here, I'm going to type this into the chat window here. There are two guys that are friends of mine, Mark and Steve, and they have a channel. They may hate me for saying this, but it's a weird name. I don't know why they picked this name, okay? But the name of the channel is the Panoptic Chopstick Guys. Search that on YouTube after my video, of course, all right? They just released a video about, the new honey badgers. At least I think they have the new honey badger video out. If they don't yet, it'll be out very, very soon. And they also have a video out about Interfit's new lithium battery pack, their portable battery pack. I guarantee you, I haven't seen the videos, but I guarantee you I would have no problem making a purchase based on their recommendation if I was in the market for those units. So I wholeheartedly encourage you to go ahead, check out their videos on them. If they haven't done the Honey Badger Unleashed yet, they will for sure. I did see a post go by on social media today. Apparently the new lithium honey badgers have reached the United States and they're being shipped now. Because when they announced them in Photokina, they were still in China, or they were on the boat from China. But they're here now in the US, so they're literally just starting to ship them. So I think those guys have done a video. Yeah, so if that's the case, I would absolutely trust what they have to say, okay? So Sinning, back to the pricing with clients. So the whole bit of flooding the market with cheaper photographers is not an issue. It's not a problem. It's really not. The fact that people think photography doesn't have value because you can take good pictures with this is not a problem. It's only a problem for lazy photographers. Now, I'm not calling you a lazy photographer, but I'm just saying it's only a problem for lazy photographers. Your challenge is, number one, I mean, how does a photographer make money? I'm going to do the short version because we're running out of time here, right? The short version. The photographer makes money by doing the best work that they are humanly capable of doing, and then finding somebody dumb enough to pay them for it. That's how it works. If we go all the way back to the master painters, Rembrandt, Renoir, all those people, well, they didn't make a lot of money, but they had patrons. And these patrons gave them shelter, a place to live, a place to sleep. They fed them. They put clothes on their back. They put a roof over their head, and they gave them a space to work in exchange for their artwork. So they did the best that they could do, and they found somebody dumb enough to do all this for them. So the business model has been the same since way back when, right? It just has. So the challenge is you've got to do what you do and find your niche. And certainly there's a lot of, there's a lot of kind of pitfalls. There's a lot of mistakes young photographers make. One, they show bad work. Two, they don't put together a good marketing plan. Three, they don't put together a business plan at all. Four, they show too much stuff to where they're a jack of all trades and a master of none, okay? So, all of that stuff is the stuff that gets in the way. But I have learned, so I'm hoping, Cindy, that you're not one of these, because I'm not trying to insult you. But I have learned over the years that the people that complain about the cheaper photographers and not being able to make money are just lazy. They're not working hard enough. They went out and they spent a ton of money on camera equipment, and they want to make money, but they're not doing the things that they need to do to make money. Because here's the thing. People think that being a professional photographer is exciting. You know those memes that you see online all the time, like what people think I do and what I really do, right? So, the photography version, even for, me standing right here, it would be people think I do, running around, taking pictures, standing on stages, talking, all that kind of stuff. What I really do is hours and hours and hours and hours in front of a computer, writing and typing and answering social media comments and answering people's questions. And traveling and preparing talks. Because I don't just show up and talk. You guys, if you heard me in the beginning of the talk tonight, tomorrow I'll be releasing the next video, and then the second half of tomorrow and all day Friday, I will be rehearsing for New York. What am I rehearsing? My actual speech? No. I'll be rehearsing the photographs I'm going to be doing. I will have Lola, my mannequin, out, and I will be working on the lighting setups and the shots that I'm going to do in New York on stage. In fact, I'll even go ahead and I'll share some of that stuff on my Instagram Live. So if you're not following me on Instagram, go follow me on Instagram, and I will do that. Coolly, I have done a video on some of the business sides of it. It's all about marketing. There's 4 of them. So if you go to my channel, type in the word marketing in the little magnifying glass at the top of the channel, not the YouTube search, but in the magnifying glass on my channel page, you'll find those 4 videos. And there's some of the basics. And certainly there's a lot more that I could share. We'll get to that in time, but I have done some, okay? Anand is here. It must be morning down under. How you doing, Anand? Hey, Anand, by the way, Shutters Inc. podcast. Since you're down in Australia or that neck of the woods, I'm going to be doing their podcast this week. I'll be recording it late Friday night my time. I don't know that it's live. I think they actually release it like on Monday or that. So I will post on my social media when it's coming out for the rest of you, because you can listen to it anywhere in the world. But it is from down under. So I will be doing that soon. Okay. What do I recommend? What do you recommend that you study is fine? Oh, patrons. Okay, not patriots. I was like, wait, patrons. You don't have to study to find patrons. You have to do work that is going to make people want to purchase what you have. Okay, you're reversing the process. Okay, if your work is good enough, people will want it done. So if you're having a hard time getting people to pay for your work, that means your work's not good enough, or you're looking in the wrong place. It's that simple. Okay, so Susan, thank you. Yes, and I'll be posting links on social media as soon as I know what the release day is on that. Okay. Cooley Priestley, if you don't hustle, you die as a photographer. That's very true. Photography, and even what I do, guys, it's not a 9-to-5 thing. I work all or part of 7 days a week, and I'm not asking for any sympathy. I love what I'm doing. I am blessed to be doing it. But that's just a simple fact of it. You don't accomplish this in 40 hours a week. You simply don't. And even for all the hours I work, I'm struggling to keep up with everything I'm doing. But for me, I wouldn't have it any other way. So, John Smith, let's try and get one more in here. For portraits with a cityscape in the fairly distant background, what is an idea of aperture you would use, or how much blur do you think would be ideal if the client wants the environment behind? Wow, John, that's another one of those, I can't answer that question. So, but here are the things you need to think about, John, right? So the first question I have back for you is, well, okay, fairly distant, meaning a mile, 2 miles? What kind of lens? Are you going to shoot it with a wide angle, or are you going to shoot it with a telephoto? Reason I ask that question is because a 24 or 35 millimeter lens are going to give me much more depth of field than an 85, 100, or 200 millimeter lens will, right? So all of those things are, going to be factors. And then how much blur do you think would be ideal if the client wants the environment behind the subject? You should not be asking me or any other photographer that question. You should be having a discussion with the client. They're the ones paying. So you should find some sample images with varying amounts of blur in the background and show them to the client and say, hey, just as a reference, since we're going to have the city behind them, what do you like? What do you think is best suited for your shot? And then once you have that information, it's going to be a lot easier to problem solve or to ask somebody like me to help you problem solve what you need to be doing in terms of the focal length of your lens, the distances you need to shoot at, the apertures you need to shoot at, etc. But unfortunately, with the information you're giving me, it's going to be really hard to give you an answer that's actually going to help you, because if I give you an answer, it could completely screw you up. So I would start out by having a conversation with your client to try and get a better sense of, what is the ideal amount of blur, because it's up to the client, not you or me. So that would be what I would recommend, okay? Last one, real quick. Art in the dark. Is it common for public parks to charge photographers for shooting in them? It is more common in today's world than it has been in the past. It varies by municipality, but it's definitely not unheard of, and it is, I hate to use the word routine, but it is somewhat routine in many cases at this point, okay? All right, gang, so listen, I gotta run tomorrow. The video on the Dumbo shoot, so you'll learn a little bit about the EPL9, but you'll also learn a lot more about, what are the steps that I went through to do this. And here's the crazy part. You ready? You should all sit down for this. Seriously, sit down just in case you're standing. If you're driving, pull over, because this is going to freak people out. The pictures that I did for Olympus at this shoot, at this event, I shot JPEG, no RAW, in some of the craziest lighting you've ever seen, meaning the sun was behind the clouds, the sun was out, it was backlit, front lit, side lit, it was all kind of lit. So I shot JPEGs, no RAW, to prove that you can do it if you pay attention. And here's the crazy one, gang. I shot auto ISO. Yeah, I used a 4-letter word. But I did, because it was a run and gun type shoot that really needed me to make sure that I had the right shutter speeds so that I wasn't getting subject motion or, worse yet, camera motion. And I wanted to shoot everything at f4. You'll understand why when you see the video. So shot JPEGs, auto ISO, and you'll get to see the images tomorrow in the video that's coming out. In the meantime, gang, thank you for spending the evening with me. I appreciate it. Next week, here's the last super important piece. TogChat is going to be on Tuesday night next week, 6 p.m. on Tuesday, just next week. That's because Wednesday night I'll be in New York and I can't get a solid enough internet connection where I'm going to be able to do the live stream on Wednesday, and I don't want to miss it. I still want to spend an evening with you guys. So hopefully you'll be able to do Tuesday next week. So it'll be Tuesday night, 6 o'clock for TogChat. There it is, Andrew L. JPEG. Oh my God, yes, I know. And it worked. Woo, pretty crazy, right? So anyway, I hope to see you guys on Tuesday. New video tomorrow. Check it out. Hopefully I'm going to meet a bunch of you in New York. We got to do some cool selfies, all right? And as always, gang, you know the drill. Please remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.